The Business Innovation Zone, also known as The Biz, is the place to start for entrepreneurs in Iowa. The Biz helps entrepreneurs and startup companies focus on idea development, business models, strategy, market validation, mentoring, and networking. We also help clients connect with qualified community and state resources needed to grow their business. Throughout the year, we provide a number of networking opportunities with experienced entrepreneurs and business leaders by offering monthly luncheons and all-day seminars on marketing and finance. You can learn more about the Biz at bizci.org.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. And thanks to Mark and Tim Hayes for facilitating the day and the planning, all the folks involved. Happy to be here and delighted to talk about sales processes for emerging enterprises. How do we align those? How do we identify a strategy path? So that's where we'll start today. Specifically, we'll address a handful of questions that lie just beyond our marketing initiatives and programs. Marketing is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing, a living, breathing thing, but we're going to get into the method. What's our defined path or strategy for advancing dialogue with prospective customers? From there, we want to get into the message. So once we're in front of the customer, what do we say? How do we behave? We're not going to do a lot on tactics. This is not a sales training, more about position. Okay. A lot of you have probably been to trainings, as Mike said, and that's great. Tactics are critical. But positioning is even more important. I was just reading a book about the Navy SEALs, and they're excellent, obviously, at tactics, but they're even better at staking out a position, right, and then being patient. Very interesting stuff. Same thing applies here. From there, the metrics. So how will we measure our activities? How do we build accountabilities around those metrics? And lastly, how do we monitor ourselves? What adjustments do we make throughout the process that are going to drive improved outcomes? Let me start with the obligatory, who are you, where are you from, where you been, who's your daddy, all that kind of stuff. As Mike said, I'm Matt Loecke, and I come from the fertile farm fields of northeast Iowa, Manchester. Emily is a Mantown native. Good to have you here. And grew up there, went to West Delaware High School, and father was an entrepreneur and actually built a commercial construction business. And that was one of my first exposures to organizational hierarchies and the way that life works. I'm the youngest of 4 boys. So my oldest brother, and then from on down, he got all the technical expertise, right? So he was right in there with the old man, getting all the tricks of the trade. What do you think I was doing? Matt, go to Casey's and get us some donuts. And some dew. You know, the choice of 12-year-olds everywhere, right? So I was relegated to, Casey's Donuts and Mountain Dew and then the custodial duties of picking up the job site and sweeping and whatnot. But that was good for me too. But I learned at that point that, okay, the guy that's really closest to the decision maker is really going to benefit the most, right? So what happened? My oldest brother took over the business. The other 3 of us, we bailed onto other things, okay? That's the way it works, laws of nature. From there, I went to beautiful Cedar Falls, Iowa, went to UNI. That's a shot of the Campanile up there. And had a great time, love UNI, love Cedar Falls, and loved it so much it took me an extra semester to get out of there. By the time I was finally done, I hopped in the car and moved to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. For those of you that are following basketball, we're now curious whether or not the Tar Heels have enough fuel in the tank to make a run here. They're a little beat up, but spent from 2000 until, I guess a few years ago, out in North Carolina in Chapel Hill and Durham, and worked for a media company out there. I was vice president of sales, and at the time when I entered, the great lessons from that experience, the time when I entered, the company was in trouble, and so I got exposed to a professional turnaround manager right out of college. And it was a small organization, so I was able to work closely with him and observe his behaviors and watch, the way he made decisions. And he was an ex-Marine and led like a 700-man unit. And but he also had a very personal side that he wasn't just a driver he was able to identify with people on a personal level. And that was very, very valuable for me to witness. He left a couple years into it. He had done his turnaround work, and then we went and grew the company about 3 or 4 times over, and that's really where I got an opportunity to work across the country in many markets. By the time today it's called UCampus Media, and it's over 200 markets in 45 states and 20,000 customers. But it was a lot of fun, and the big lesson there was really centered on navigating through large, complex decision-making hierarchies at universities and colleges, how to manage those constituencies. So that public decision-making hierarchy is another animal, but that was fun as well. After daughter was born, my wife kind of looked at me cross-eyed and said, let's head back to Mother Iowa. And so we landed in Ames, which is my wife's home turf, thereabouts, and lived in Ames for a handful of years. And a few years ago, I started my own firm centered on Salesforce optimization, consulting for business development, do some work with startups, and it's the diversity of the work I really appreciate because I work with an animal health company that has me on feed yards in Texas and Oklahoma and California, and then I also work with organizations like Harvard agencies in Cambridge, Mass. And so it's fun to have cow shit on your shoes, get on the plane, and the next day be in Harvard Square. It's kind of cool. And then the day after that be in Ames and relax, right? That's why we live here. Good. So that's the long and the short of it. Let's get back down to business here. So we said, want to talk about and define a sales process, a rollout from a method, message, metrics, and monitoring standpoint. To help us do that, what I've done is created a hypothetical business. Okay, so we're gonna cover those questions, but we want to do it within the context of Bell Tower. It's a software company. I've created it for demonstration purposes. I was telling Mike, I said, I'd love to talk about an existing client, but I don't want to lose their confidence or trust or what have you. So Bell Tower is a scenario I'm familiar with, and to make it even more familiar, I put it in the context of higher education, so that helps me relate some of the concepts. Just an overview, 2-year-old company serving higher education market with a SaaS, that's software as a service, integrates all marketing communications initiatives, tracks prospective student interest. Response from target market has been very positive, but broad exposure has been limited. So it's a product, it's a web-based solution that supports admissions recruitment for colleges and universities. Cool? Steve is our founder. He's a great American. He's a technology guy. He developed the concept with a friend that works in college admissions, right? So his friend said, hey, Steve, you're a smart guy. We've got a major problem. Can you help us? They worked through it. This is what has come of it. He's a small office from which he runs a handful of other interests, and he dedicates now about half his time to Bell Tower. He's hired a local marketing agency to do some of the upfront branding, design. He did his own website, those things. Obviously, he built the platform. Defining capabilities for the product, provides a single dashboard for college recruitment activity, tracks online inquiries, response from that direct outreach, manages and measures direct mail and email response rates, social media, and those. The other defining benefit from the product is as you're working through the recruitment process, it defines for you strategy suggestions, right, to answer the question, what's next? Revenue, new client enrollment fee of $4,500 with a quarterly subscription fee of $600. He's got 6 customers. There's 6 new customers that were enrolled in the last quarter of 2011, bringing his total active customer count to 12. So what you have here is a business that's not yet doing $100,000 in revenue, right? It's still a side business. It's time for him to double down. He hires Eliza, a young professional with a couple of years of B2B experience for a marketing sales role, along with Zach to be a project manager and to handle implementation and customer service. The focus in 2012, turn the organization into a viable and sustainable enterprise, capitalize on growing interest from the target market, and generate enough revenue to bring his friend from college admissions in to run the business. right? Because he's a technology guy. He loves the fact that he's built this, but he has no interest in wrangling with other admissions directors around the country. He knows the guy to do it. So this will serve as our model. If you look at this scenario right now, Steve, he's got a new salesperson and a project manager. He could grow the company significantly in the next year, the next 2 quarters. How would you sell it? What do you think Steve should do exactly? How should he sell it? Should he get on the road, start knocking on doors? Any ideas? Just think about it.
Sell to whom?
Was that your question?
Yes.
To college admissions offices.
Okay. What strategy?
What strategy? Yep. Where's square one for them? Consider that. Handful of methods, obviously, and there are several. What's our defined path or strategy for advancing dialogue with prospective customers? And again, we're looking at this from the marketing box forward, right? So we've got all these marketing initiatives in play that we have support around. So now, when a customer enters our radar, what is the process for advancing the communication? Is it a phone qualification? Do we get on the road and knock on doors? Is it an in-person visit? Is it a webinar highlighting our capabilities? Is it a YouTube video? Is it an in-person presentation that defines our product features and benefits? Is it a demo, meaning they just need to get their hands on it and then they're gonna love it? Lots of different methods, right? Our goal today is to identify a handful of methods that can apply to this scenario. Whether you are in startup mode, meaning you have an existing idea that you're sitting on that you want to advance, or you're working within an organization now that you might want to reset your sales processes. You might want to recast around people, processes, and get alignment. The method then for Bell Tower, the path. What I ask you to do, or recommend and encourage you to do, is identify with your concept through this path. I should say that a strategy is, this is not a big surprise, but a strategy is unique to each business, right? A lot of considerations. What's the revenue per account, geography, focus, product, the level of product differentiation, a lot of things to consider. So this path that we talk through is not the one-size-fits-all solution. So just a heads up on that. But when you identify with this path, identify with your own organization, your own idea, and it might help you think about, okay, how do we organize our own processes? Cool? Step 1, account development rep sources leads through email and phone outreach for Bell Tower. That's Eliza's job, okay? It's a marketing, it's a cross between marketing and sales, outreach. That's the path. That's square one for Bell Tower, getting started. Step 2, a webinar, a demo highlighting software features and functionality. So account development rep moves prospects through the system. They land in a webinar, a demo, highlighting features and capabilities. Step 3, follow up with invitation to connect by phone for discovery and qualification. This path is aligned with, for Bell Tower, an organization with relatively low revenue per account, right? $4,500 to get on the road and spend a lot of time in front of people at $4,500 per. It's kind of in a tough spot, especially when you've just doubled down your investment in the business on personnel. You have to think, okay, how much of this can be done by phone? How much of it can be automated in terms of digital communication? And that's really what we're talking about here is a path that does not necessarily require bell tower to show up, okay? That's a cost thing. Now again, depending on your idea, your concept, if you've got a revenue per account that's much higher and a limited base of customers, meaning you play in a niche, well then showing up is essential. But for $4,500, and in this space particularly, someone can make a decision, right, without having to show up. Is that a stretch? Follow-up note with invitation to connect by phone. Phone meeting for discovery and qualification. Proposal, furnish solutions, option, pricing via online meeting. In this scenario, it's not just throw the proposal back, it's a walkthrough. 6, follow-up communication, the nurture, Q&A, that waiting period, right? That's always exciting. Love that. What did they say? I don't know, I haven't heard from them. Awesome. Step 7, furnish agreement, terms, conditions, agreement adoption, next steps outlined, relationships defined, DTR for the kids. And step 9, implementation, service model execution, promises kept. So for bell tower, with the people, the players involved, revenue per account, the confidence they have in their product differentiation, meaning that when decision makers in this space see it, they're going to stop and take a look, right? This path is built for that scenario. Within each of these blocks, there are probably 10 other blocks that have to be executed. For Eliza in step 1, the account development rep, the communication, right? So the message that she sends has to be defined. What gets shared on the front end, what she says if she has dialogue with someone, and what her response is for advancing it. All that is defined, and I mean, we could literally spend a day on each block if we wanted to. Here's a sample strategy from an actual customer, unnamed. But what this is very transactional, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What you saw here is it's transactional because we're still talking about a relatively low revenue per account, but there's a lot of steps there, and we've got discovery in there. It moves it down the path towards what we call consultative selling, tailoring solutions, et cetera. This is more transactional, and this is a product. So if you're sitting on an idea that is a singular product, this is a tool, to be specific. And it is for the public and private sector, and it's a B2B product. The way it works, there's a database of 1,000 customers in the system, and they want to roll out this tool that every one of them can use. And now it's a matter of having them respond. And it's a $1,500 piece of machinery. Okay? They go in the contact queue. On day 1 of the launch for this transactional model, an introductory note with a product profile. Dear Jerry, check out the ... model X4000. I've attached a description. Let me know if you're interested in trying a demo. The only goal with this model is to get their hands on it, because once they have it, everybody that has touched it has said, I want one, because it's totally differentiated from what the current tool is for that market. Okay? So it's a matter of just getting their attention and sharing it with them. So day 1, an introductory note. If there's a response, it moves into the facilitate and advance, right? So it's passed from Mr. Jackson to Mr. Clone, and then it's moved, and Dustin is copied on it, and it moves through the kind of the closing path, the advancing path. If after 15 days, no response, they receive a phone call. Jerry, I sent you a note. How are the other products working for you? How's that model, et cetera? I sent you a note about the X4000. Did you get a chance to look at it, right? So just nudging him a little bit. Hope you're doing well. Say hi to your mama. Boom, got it. So a phone inquiry after 15 days. No response, because a lot of those are voicemails. No response. Back to email 2, follow-up. Jerry, here's the story behind our new product. Call me if you're interested. Boom, no response. Day 45, another phone call. Interested, move to the advancing path. Not interested, move out to day 60, a follow-up note with just a PDF of FAQs about the product, right? And it includes a testimonial, or a handful of testimonials. This is very easy to execute, very easy to monitor, and for this particular product, it's moving the ball. So in the last 60 days, there's been 50 transactions just on that $1,500 product. But the client, for their part, because it's technical, when they saw this, they immediately, because sales has always been, how do we get our arms around sales? We're technical guys. When they saw this, they got really excited because it was a model or a path that they could follow. It wasn't soft. This is pretty hard and fast, right? This is a model you execute. It's not rocket science. It's a matter of setting the strategy and then pulling through, right? That's an easy one, but this is it's a real model. Message, back to the idea of a bell tower. When we have the customer's attention, what will we say and do? How will we behave? Is it just transactional? I mean, in the last case, all this communication happens over email. I mean, there's not a lot of tailoring the needs because the tool does one thing, right? But it fills a need. Here, every prospect of bell tower has unique needs, right? Differentiated by size, location, the type, whether they're public or private. So the question that we ask in this relative to messaging is it transactional? Is it consultative? Is it high-end solution that's tailored where you're teaching the customer on integration? And it comes down to, is it process-oriented? That the sales process, that it is a sales process with limited tension, or is it, here's what I have, here's how much it is, here's what it does, do you want one, yes or no? That's detail and decide, chuck and duck, whatever you want to call it. There are places where that's the appropriate model, right? Other times it requires a process. Relative to messaging, we talk about defining capabilities. Or actually, let's identify the approach, at least some of the underpinnings of bell tower, at least the way the path was created. Focused on unique customer needs, discovery rooted in a dedicated questioning strategy, which we'll discuss. Trust built through a series of interactions. Proposal not provided unless need is certain and adoption is likely. That's a tough one for us to get our arms around, isn't it? Because we've all made proposals to people that stalled, got lost, went unreturned, right? It's because we didn't move far enough along in a path that makes the likelihood of a positive outcome absolutely certain. But it's very difficult to do that because when you feel like it's time to close the deal, you want to gather up your horses, provide the proposal, right, and do it. It takes a lot of patience to wait until adoption is certain. The type of questions they ask, the type of communication, the type of back and forth. Do I understand the organizational hierarchy? Is there a hidden influence that can stall the deal? You've got to understand all those things. And again, we could spend an entire day on hidden influences, but it's a beautiful day. Let's not do it. Closing occurs naturally as prospect moves through the defined path, limited tension. Okay? Again, in this scenario, it does not require Zig Ziglar as the salesperson, right? You don't have to be a freaking flamethrower to execute. It is just a matter of defining the path, defining the right pieces, the right design to the communication in the path, and executing. Consultative selling is easy. Well, not necessarily easy because it requires a lot of questioning. but it's a model that can be executed by anyone. You don't have to be a guru, a sales guru to do it. It's a matter of patience and communication. So message, back to the message. Talked about the approach. Let's talk about defining capabilities, and I'm going to move through this piece quickly. Defining your capabilities, meaning what is that 2 or 3 sentence chunk that describes what your organization does in the most compelling and impactful way. It should link the capabilities to the customer's likely needs, identify the purpose for being in business, and it should be interesting and imply solution, right? For Bell Tower, we serve the higher education recruitment market with web-based software tools designed to track prospective student interest, schedule and streamline communication, optimize forecasting for enrollment, making recruitment management easy and efficient and effective. So, being able to define your capabilities in the simplest form. I probably went a little far wording this, but that's what you're aiming for, just generally speaking. Discovery. One of the things that's interesting about building a consultative selling model and a path that includes discovery is that this will be the longest point of customer interaction. And it is the most critical piece, that question asking phase, right? Typically, we, as communicators, we remember everything we say, right? We only remember about 10% of what other people say. And that's the research has been done. You guys will only capture about 10% of what I say. We might be able to support that with some visuals and, better illustrations, but that's kind of the rule. Discovery is rooted in the idea that if we can help people identify and communicate around their own challenges, right? The need that they own for that will be so significant that they'll want to take action, right? Pretty simple. Discovery, relative to Bell Tower, what you want to have on discovery is a defined set of questions. And I'm not saying that it's scripted necessarily, but the thinking behind the questions should be very targeted. For one of my clients, I work with the animal health business, and they are in cattle and poultry and swine. And it's Eli Lilly's animal health group, Elanco. And what I spend every Friday on the phone with the salespeople from the poultry business unit, just talking about the questions they're going to ask for their meetings the next week. And we're talking about the same products week after week. I mean, these are great products. Feed, increase feed efficiency, reduce death loss, et cetera. But we dedicate all that time to questioning. And it's not, tell me what you're currently doing, tell me about your current ration. It's, how do you feel about the effectiveness of your current ration, right? Discovery. For Bell Tower, what's your current process for tracking and communicating with interested students? Situational, right? What has worked well? What have been the challenges? How do you feel about the current process? Well, it's frustrating, man. Like, it's not good. We've got all these tools. We haven't figured out social media. We're thinking about canning our recruiters that go out to the high schools, or not canning, but canning the project, or canning that piece of it, sorry. We're thinking about, realigning that. We don't know. It's, what's everybody else telling you? Well, you're kind of in the same boat as everybody else. Does everyone on your team feel the same way? Huge discovery question, right? If it's a resounding, well, yeah, everybody knows it's, or I don't know, I think my boss gets it, I don't know if she does or not. That's something you want to know, right? Why are you searching for new solutions? If you could design your own program, what would it do for you? What will happen if you're able to identify and adopt a new solution, new strategy? So again, helping the customer understand their own need, right, and drawing it out with the questions. we typically ask situational questions. What are you currently spending on your enrollment and recruitment process? Okay. How many are you recruiting? You know, we interrogate the metrics as opposed to how they feel about their progress, their frustrations, their preferences, their biases, their attitudes, and that's where the action is. You have to get the metrics, right, to make a proposal, because you've got to have a proposal that answers some economic questions, such as return on investment. That'll come, but the more time you spend here, the greater trust, commitment, and affinity from the customer. Extended dialogue, strong qualification, needs uncover, growing commitment, next step defined. You see the time axis growing. As that grows, trust, commitment, affinity. Short dialogue, soft qualification around metrics, limited needs uncovered, limited trust and commitment to next steps, right? So what you're looking for in these impact questions are in here. If you could do it yourself, how would you do it? How exactly do you think it should be done? How do you feel? How would you feel if you were able to do that? How would you feel? Right. We had a customer. I was on a sales call in North Carolina for a swine operation a couple weeks ago, and the customer said, "Man, if we could do that in all of our facilities, we'd rule the world. You know, that would just be incredible." And that was a perfect opportunity for the salesperson to say, like, specifically, what would that mean? Right? Like, what is the real implication of getting the solution integrated across 40 facilities? But because he took his hat off and he scratched his head. Man, if we could do that everywhere. Like what? What does that mean? But we stopped. You know, we didn't get it. We didn't get there. Questions are huge. This is the piece from a message standpoint. Messaging is not necessarily about what you say, right? Kind of turning this thing on its head. It's about the way we behave and the message that we send through our own questions and our own behavior, right? Because the classic paradigm is, let's show up, give them a great proposal, you know, give them the secret sauce, and let's go home winners. Well, that's old paradigm. In fact, speaking for a half hour or 45 minutes without back and forth is really uncomfortable for me, because all day long I talk to people about how you should do about 10% of the talking. So this is really awkward. I'm excited. Thank you, Tim. Value discovery. Message. Solutions and options. I'm going to be very brief here, because this is a well-worn path. It should be, in terms of presenting features and benefits, right? Find a need and fill it. One thing that I've seen that's working, framing a situation problem question at the start of a solution rollout, right? And this can be verbalized, and you want to frame this in writing or some semblance of this concept to set the table for a solution. The situation is, the problem with that is, so the question becomes, situation, managing recruitment, marketing, communications is an increasingly challenging task that requires new tools. That's situation, right? The problem with that is there are many solutions, but they only address part of the problem. So the question becomes, what does a fully integrated, streamlined approach look like? Right? Situation, problem, question. When I was VP of sales, we would try to get everybody to talk, because we would, you get some team members that will share a problem, and it'll take like 90 minutes. Be like, listen to what happened, right? And it's like da 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 da, and then they'll sit down, and then they'll go on forever, and you're like, oh my God, like we got a deadline, or we've got, it's 7 o'clock at night, and she's still here telling me about the same problem. We try to get everybody to communicate in terms of what's the situation, what's the problem, what's the next question. Situation is, we're behind on production of the website. Problem with that, the client said, absolutely, there's no moving the deadline. This thing must be done by the 1st. So the question becomes, how and what resources do we have available to get everybody on this thing to get this done by the 1st? Right? Situation, problem, question. It applies in everyday communication, but it also applies in framing your sales proposals. Cool? Questions to consider. I did not run through the bell tower scope on solutions and options, but the questions you want to ask in that phase, what problem specifically does your product or service solve? How does it work? What are the options? What are the technical and personnel requirements for implementation and execution? And describe the service elements and ongoing collaboration needs. Okay, easy. Metrics, this is the best part. Okay, this is the best part. Well, I shouldn't say that because you're gonna be like, I thought that was the best part. That really sucked. Let's back up. Metrics. Okay. How we set goals, measure results, and manage forecasting. Starts with goal setting. Starts with the end in mind. Baseline variables established. Okay. This is going to be a very simple example. Our products, our needs, typically are far more extensive, but for the purpose of kind of showing a metric path, you'll see a simple example. With bell tower, 2012, Steve thinks that if they can do 200,000, he can break even. Nice thing about Steve's business, no inventory, no production, right? He's produced the solution on his own time, on another dime. If he can do 200, he thinks he can support the people he has, cover the marketing bill, cover the phone, and all the the data communication stuff, all those pieces. 200K, it's a modest goal, but at 4,500, that's a good climb. Revenue per account, 4,500. Number of accounts needed for the target, 45, right? So if Steve is going to grow this thing, make it a viable business in 2012, and bring in not only employees, but also his buddy from admissions next year, this is what has to happen. From that point, whatever the simplest metric is to understand in the organization, all of the focus should go behind that metric. If you can distill it to the easiest thing, right? X per month, X per day, X per year, etc. Whatever that score that matters most is, you want to break it down and distill it to the easiest metric for everyone to understand and put all the organizational focus behind it. 45, 45, 45, right? Put it on the wall, whatever. Make that the thing that is talked about. Everyone will then know the score all the time, right? Investors, you go to your investors, if people have, outsiders have stake in it, what's the number? 23 of 45. Cool, okay, it's April, that's nice, right? Everybody can get it. Everybody will understand where are we relative to the simplest metric. Establishing leading indicators. Daily activity inputs that serve top-line objectives, the things that must happen in order to attain the larger goal. Starts with assumptions. Establishing leading indicators. We want our upfront work by the account development manager to be completed in 6 months. 125 working days, Eliza. You need to address 712 contacts by phone and email. Of the 712 contacted, now we're making assumptions, right? And these are going to move, but you have to start somewhere. 25% will advance to step 2 and accept the invitation to hear more and participate in a webinar. 178 advance to step 2, the webinar. Of the 178 that go through the webinar, 89 will accept our invitation to have a discovery conversation. That they'll say, that's cool, I like that. And what they really want to know is how much. I mean, if you haven't, and in this scenario, you wouldn't provide a specific price tag because there could be a few variables that would alter the cost. Of the 89 prospects that move through step 4, 20% will fall out of the process, 71 advance to step 5, which is furnishing the proposal, 57 advance to step 6 and 7. Right? If we can get 57 to a contract, we know there will be some stall, right? There's going to be something that's going to trip it up. Change in budgeting, new decision maker. But our metrics are going to be out 20% beyond what our target metric is, our leading indicators. At least this one that's boiled down to the 57 that's going to funnel into the final number, that needs to be about a 20% markup, right? What does this look like on the path? You see it move through, 712 contacts move in, 178 participants, you get it. These come, within each of these blocks, there's people participating, right? So our goal is to get alignment around this scenario and the people that are executing it, because that's really the key. I mean, if somebody falls asleep at the switch, right? If she can't do the work up here, then the whole thing is in the ditch, right? If the guy or gal who's executing this piece gets behind, right? It throws off our opportunity to execute on the 57 eventual contracts. So what you do is you take the path, take the assumptions to build leading indicators. Leading indicators then become the thing, those items that people commit to that drive the activity. Email sent, follow-up calls to the first batch of 712 prospects. Provide webinar online demo to 178 prospects, send follow-up notes, execute 89 discovery conversations, deliver 71 proposals, execute 57 new contract agreements. Move from the indicators onto aligning personnel and establishing accountability around each of those. Everyone knows exactly what their role is, right? There shouldn't be any confusion about what the assignment is. Eliza, 712 prospects in the next 125 days. Because in Steve's mind, the owner, he's thinking, we can do 200,000, but there's a chance we could do 400. Like, it could happen. I don't know how we'd service it. I don't know how we'd all survive it, but there's a chance that if she does the upfront work in 6 months, 125 days, versus 250 working days, that I'm not going to be sitting on December 1st at 160,000 wondering if those last trains are going to come in, right? So you move the foremost metric, the input metric, up ahead of the year-end goal of 45 new customers, right? You put her at the 6-month finish line because you want the stuff to trickle downstream from there. Then, hopefully by then, she's familiar enough with the process, she's able not only to nurture the front end 125 working days that she has in terms of contacts, but that come around the back and support all the work that she's created for these guys, right? Very clear. 45 is the number. Steve, Eliza, and Zach know exactly what they should do. It's clear. It's crystal clear. The key at this point is to monitor our strategy path. Where are the sticking points? Are the leading indicators being hit, right? Or are they being missed? Is Eliza not making the 6 contacts per day? We're not asking a whole lot here. You can do this, kid. What are the sticking points? Are we finding that discovery is a bottleneck and we're spending all our time on discovery, that instead of having 89 discoveries, we've had 200, but we're still ending up with 57? Right, so you want to start to interrogate the numbers, and you start to interrogate them at about the 100 contact mark. So you start to watch about 30 days in, okay, what are we seeing downstream from that initial input, right? At that point, then, you can start to make adjustments, little adjustments. You don't want to totally shift the strategy because Eliza and Zach will get schizophrenic. You'll lose their trust. They won't care. You guys have seen that, right? A change of plans, mid-course. Mid-course adjustments are fair if everybody understands why and how, right? Are we aligned with the pre-established leading indicators? Are we sourcing enough leads? Is our method sequence effective and aligned with market responses? Meaning, we created a strategy to email and phone our prospects, but nobody answers their phone, right? So how do we alter that source? Do we need to test alternative methods? Lastly, leading a no-slack launch. This is probably one of the biggest keys. I work with a consultant out of Boston. Well, he's actually out of Charlottesville, Virginia, and Cape Cod. His name is Dr. Bob Miles, and he's on the faculty at Harvard. And he has a turnaround methodology that I've partnered with him on. And part of his program is the no slack launch, which means that we will have everything defined. All of our commitments will be defined around key metrics, areas of focus, initiative areas, at a certain date. And when that date arrives, it is a go. We're not going to trickle in, right, into the process. It is a go. And with the sales process like this, if you're recasting or starting up, you want to define all the customer-facing communication before the launch. So what's Eliza going to say? What's the message look like? When Zach has him on a webinar, what are the 4 things that are most important that he's going to communicate and demonstrate? What are the questions that are going to be asked? All of that should be defined and agreed upon and understood, integrated before the launch, right? So that you're not making it up as you go. Because that's always what happens. Like, dude, let's call some people. Like, let's get out and make some calls. And you do that, and it's like, now what? Well, let's call them back, right? They said they were interested. Let's like phone them again or show up at their place or, whatever. You want to have all these things defined before. Set launch date and build milestones leading up to a launch, right? So if the database has to be scrubbed, if the marketing list has to be scrubbed, Eliza, by X date, your database has to be ready. You have to have an email address for every single one of them, right? And a phone number. Boom. Those milestones, because you don't want your lead sourcing person, when you ask, what's the whole, why are we stuck here? Say, well, I'm doing all the prospecting, right? Because that's going to be a legitimate objection. Well, I've got to find all the contacts. No, we're going to do this up front. Involve key team members in studying and defining the metrics, right? So Steve, for Bell Tower, should not necessarily create all these assumptions on his own and then pass them on to Steve or Eliza and Zach from that point. Involve them in that process. Help them define the assumptions. Because what they're going to do, I guarantee, their assumptions are going to be off the charts. They're going to be like, oh, if we contact 712, surely we'll get like a 30% hit rate, right? Because they're going to be totally optimistic. And the fact is, it's going to be way lower. And as the principal in that enterprise, you're okay with them having that mindset, and you can offer a challenge. If you can do that, excellent. We will take this thing to the moon. Let's build something that we know we can secure, right? Because by that time, they're resigned to, we got this, right? So, but manage the post-launch blues. Doubt will creep, right? Even after they're pumped, first 60 days in, even the owner is going to be scratching his head saying, are we sinking? Is this awful? Should I go and spend more time on these other things? Are these people going to have a job next month, right? Stay the course if you're seeing a return on the activity. Modify if that activity is not producing downstream, right, those metrics. But watch out for the post-launch blues and manage them. Manage them closely. And anticipate. Say, look, in about 60 days, we're all going to come together, look at each other cross-eyed and say, is this thing working? Or are we totally screwed? That's going to happen, right? So anticipate it, know it, and be prepared to overcome. And persistently evaluate those lead measures, those leading indicators, right? The no slack launch. Align the materials, personnel, everything that goes into the process, and flip the switch. Because Steve is going to lose his mind in this 6 months, the owner here. He's going to give up, he's it'll be incredibly stressful, but it'll pay off. So, what questions do you have? Yes?
What applications out there? I know Salesforce.com, I'm using that a little bit. Have you seen for managing your team's process going through this?
From CRM?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's hundreds of solutions. The folks that I work with have Goldmine is one. Siebel, I think is another one. What did you guys use at Pfizer, Doug? Yeah. You weren't paying attention. You were just rocking. Doug and I moved to North Carolina, moved to Chapel Hill together, 10 years ago, back in the day. Any other questions? Yes, Bud.
What's been your experience as far as using Skype for video conferencing with customers?
Yeah, I've only used it for meetings internally with clients. So I have not had personally customer-facing communication through Skype. Has anybody?
I have. I personally like GoToMeeting a little bit better as far as being able to share information, but I still prefer not to use Skype just because I'm not sure of the bandwidth and connection and all that on the other side necessarily. So I would just hate to put everything kind of dependent on how reliable it is on that side, personally.
Good. Any other questions? Is Bell Tower going to make it? They got a crack at this thing?
All right, Matt, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.